assisted living dementia communities here in the U.S. Marsha covers everything you need to know as a family caregiver, especially if you care for a loved one with Alzheimer's disease or other related dementia or chronic illness. If you have a friend or relative that is also a family caregiver, call them now. They won't want to miss a minute. And let them know they can watch on caregiversolutions.info. And they can listen on WNN 1470 AM in South Florida or nationally on the iHeartRadio app. Now, sit back, relax, and learn from our host, Marsha Teal, as she brings information to you that may just be the caregiving solution you need.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today on Caregiver Solutions Info Show. We have another wonderful program for you today, and we are live from Boca Raton, Florida. So I have a question for you. First off, are you a caregiver? Do you care for someone that can't care for themselves? If you answer yes to both of those, then this show is the perfect one for you. And the reason I say that is because caregivers, as you know, you're walking in the shoes that a lot of people haven't walked in before, and it's all new. So this program is brought to you so that we can help experts in the field of all different aspects, from elder law to finances to physicians, every kind of specialty you can think of that's going to help you as a caregiver have a better journey. I'm not going to say it's easier, because it's never really easy, but it can be better. And so this program, I'm happy to say, we're celebrating our 4th year, started 4 years ago this month. And so many of you have told us how grateful you are to have this resource. And I'm so glad that we are able to continue and bring all of this great information to you. Have you ever walked into a room and there's been a lot of conversations going on, but you really can't pick up on any one of them? Has someone asked you a question and you really didn't hear it, and so you asked them to repeat it, and maybe you still didn't hear it? And then you think, well, are they not speaking loud enough? Or is there something wrong with me? Or maybe there was some interference, like the TV was going on. Or maybe the person was just mumbling and they weren't speaking clearly. I think as we age and we are taking care of other people and we see a lot of this happening in our lives and in other people's lives, we begin to wonder, what's it all about? And is there a correlation between our hearing and our memory loss? Also, is it normal? Is it natural as we age? What should we be looking for? What should we do to help ourselves? So today we have an expert here to answer all those questions and more. And I'm very happy that he is here with me in the studio right now. I'm going to introduce him to all of you. His name is Ryan Bean. Hi, Ryan.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you for joining us today.
It's a pleasure.
So Ryan here, he is a board-certified hearing aid specialist, and he is with America's Best Hearing. It's a company that's all over. You're going to hear a little bit more about the company as we go through today's program. And I'm grateful that you could come here, Ryan, today and speak to all of these issues. We have a lot of people that would need to know this, and we cover a lot of topics. But this topic is important because it's something as we age, we're all going to be going through it. A lot of our caregivers are caring for elderly people. Maybe they're adult children who are caring for elderly people, and they say, oh, he just can't hear, or there's a lot of misconceptions. So we're going to just talk about any and all of that with you because you're the expert. So my first question to you is, you are a board-certified hearing aid specialist, but you're not an audiologist.
Correct.
So what's the difference?
We get that question quite a bit. And so there's two types of fields that an audiologist typically will fall into. One is where we dispense and fit hearing aids, whether it's a board or hearing instrument specialist or an audiologist. We typically work in a retail type setting. Somebody's coming in that has maybe felt like they've been dealing with hearing loss, or maybe they've been to an ear, nose, and throat and they know they have hearing loss, and they're coming in specifically regarding hearing aids. The other scope of practice for an audiologist is where they work in a clinical setting. And what they're doing is they're not diagnosing, but they're testing. This is somebody that's maybe seen a short-term change in their hearing. There's a red flag, so they're that type of situation where you're going to an ear, nose, and throat physician. Not to say if somebody comes in and there's red flags, we still send them to an ear, nose, and throat. But as a audiologist or a hearing instrument specialist, we're not medical doctors. We don't diagnose anything. Even if we know it's wrong, we can't, by law, tell you what it is. We still have to send you to a physician to have that technically diagnosed. We don't write prescriptions.
So is there a medical differentiation as far as training or education between the two?
There is. An audiologist has done their 4 years of undergrad, and then they decided specifically to go into audiology. Somebody like myself, my background, I had no interest in hearing loss or hearing aids. I didn't even know that was a career option. I worked at a university. My background completely different. To tell you a little bit about myself, I began having trouble with my ears in first grade.
Really?
I had tubes put in time after time. The perforations in the eardrum, that's where they go in and make a perforation. Put in a small tube, it drains the middle ear.
Is that because as a child you were getting ear infections?
You know, to be honest, I don't really remember. What I can tell you is my first grade teacher noticed I wasn't hearing well. And so time after time, they would, the tubes came out, the perforations wouldn't heal. They had to patch them. Well, time after time, those eardrums would rupture again from being a child, swimming, whatever it may be, and they had to patch them time after time again. In 8th grade, I got my first pair of hearing aids, but I would not wear them because I was in 8th grade. I refused. So it wasn't until adulthood that I actually decided to start wearing hearing aids, because even though it's just like anything in the body, you may know you have some hearing loss, but you always say it's not that bad. If other people would just follow my rules, we would be okay. If they would look at me, if these type of things. It's no different than somebody that wants to quit smoking. Well, I know they need to quit smoking, but, and then they make justifications why not to change the behavior. So it was actually a conversation at work that led me to say enough's enough, and I went and got hearing aids.
Because you were having some difficulties at work listening or hearing your coworkers?
Yeah, well, we were sitting around one day, and it was kind of a down period. We had the university president and several other people were just having a conversation, and the president of the university turns to me and says, "Ryan, I used to think you were a jerk." "Oh, why would you think such a thing?" And she said, "Every day when I'd pass your office, I would say something to you, you ignored me." Because over time, that's just noise in the hallway. There's no clarity to it. You already hit on some of these key points. Hearing loss doesn't mean you don't hear. What it means is speech is not clear. And I can't tell you how many times myself or somebody with hearing loss will ask me, "What did you say?" And they say, "I wasn't even speaking to you." So what you learn to do over time is cope with it. And one of the key things for human beings is to avoid embarrassment. And so what we do is, even if we can't follow a conversation, we pretend we do. We smile, we nod, we fake social cues, even if those social cues may not be appropriate at that moment.
Which is very, very interesting that you brought that up, because, of course, as you know, this program is for caregivers, especially for caregivers who are taking care of someone with Alzheimer's or another type of dementia. And we call that covering up.
Yeah.
So if a person with dementia doesn't understand because they can't actually perceive and understand the words anymore because of the disease in their brain, they don't want to maybe disappoint you. They don't want to feel embarrassed.
Yeah.
So they're going to answer you to what they think you said or to what they think you want to hear. And so they're covering up because they want to cover up the fact that they don't know what you said. So it's very interesting that you said that, because right there is a correlation between people that don't have dementia but are covering up, just like people who do have dementia cover up.
And one thing to add to that, too, understand that frustration is not just for the person with hearing loss. The frustration goes over to the spouse, the children, or whoever's taking care of them, because they don't understand hearing loss. By your rules, a person with hearing loss is supposed to hear exactly how you hear. The person with the hearing loss expects you to understand exactly what their struggles are. And because it's very difficult to communicate what you can't hear to somebody. You know, if your vision changes, that's a very physical stimulus. You know it instantaneously. Well, okay, that's not clear. Hearing, you have no perception of it. I always tell patients that come in and say, "I really don't think I have hearing loss, but my children say I do, or my spouse says I do." And one of the correlations, if you take a photograph of yourself right now, and then compare it to a photograph of yourself from 10 years ago, you actually see the physical changes.
Right.
You don't see it on a small basis. You go, oh, wow, I really did age over that period of time.
Hopefully better.
You may physically feel different or feel the difference, but you don't see it on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
Hearing is very difficult because, again, I'll have people come in and say, well, I don't miss anything that I want to or I don't want to. Well, how do they know? They have no idea. And I can take that from my own personal experience. I had no idea that how I was being perceived at my career. And there's a direct correlation that also shows the amount of income that's lost to people with untreated hearing loss in the workplace, because they're seen as aloof or antisocial or these misconceptions when it's really just hearing loss.
Wow, very interesting. And I can understand as a kid when you got your first pair of hearing aids, being, was 8 years old or in 8th grade?
8th grade.
8th grade. That's adolescence. And it's not cool, right? It's not cool to wear hearing aids. But you mentioned if people have a vision problem, it's really cool to wear glasses. I guess I don't know what made it that way, if it was marketing or what the reason is, but if you put on a pair of glasses, you're actually thought of as being smarter.
And one of the things, it was funny you mentioned 8th grade, and one of the things I can tell you now with people that are new in school, one of the comments that they always say to me is how quiet I was in school. And I think back to that, and I didn't really understand it at the time. Now looking back at that, it was just a coping thing of, one of the things that happens with hearing loss is it's not that somebody can't hear. When we actually look at an audiogram, we can see where people are missing certain letters of speech. A TH, a CH, an S, an F. That is how you tell if that word was thought or bought, or fish from dish. With hearing loss, we're forced to use the context of a conversation to guess at those missing words. That's why somebody with hearing loss actually misunderstands what somebody said, and they said, I thought you said this. And the other person goes, no, this is what I said. Well, it sounded like you said. And it turns into this almost an argument sometimes.
Right. They're trying to tell the other person, this is what you said. I heard you say that, and maybe you mumbled. Maybe you spoke under your breath. Maybe you just, didn't want me to hear what you said in reality because it wasn't nice. Whatever the reason is, they're looking for excuses.
One of the things, and I can say this a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but there's some truth behind it. In my clinic, in my office, when I have a husband and wife come in, and years of frustration have built up. And it's not just hearing, it's a variety of things, because we always treat the people we spend the most time with and the most comfortable with different than we treat a stranger.
For sure.
And so one of the things that tends to happen over time is they don't really understand the dynamics of the hearing loss. And I have a saying, it's, you want somebody to say, that's right, not you're right. And what that means is, if you're in an argument with somebody, when you say you're right, what you're actually saying is I'm tired of listening to you. And to preserve the relationship, the other person goes, yeah, I'm right, and they walk off. What that means is, because the person, when we're dealing with hearing loss, and what people will tell you is a spouse will say, or a caregiver, they're not going to understand me, so I just give up, or I don't even ask them in the first place. Mm-hmm. The person with the hearing loss will say, I get tired of asking them to repeat, so I just act like I hear it, or I understand they're asking me something, and I just ignore it because I can't understand it. And so these dynamics began to build up over time, and it creates what we call chunking.
Chunking?
Yeah.
What is chunking?
Chunking is when a behavior happens over time. And so it becomes not you do, it's you always do.
Got to be careful with that A word.
And that doesn't let a person out. That doesn't allow a person to make a change in the behavior. And so one of the things I love is to be able to take the hearing test, take the math behind it, and show them how it affects their day-to-day life. And I can actually show them, and you don't have to remember this term, but it's called signal-to-noise ratio.
Say that again?
Signal-to-noise ratio.
Signal-to-noise ratio.
What that is a measurement of the wanted signal versus the unwanted signal. So if you and I were talking and my voice is at 50 decibels and somebody's playing a radio at 50 decibels, you're not going to understand what I'm saying. That washes each other out. Now, if I'm at 60 decibels and that radio stays at 50, we call that a plus 10. So what we look at is how much background noise for the average person is 2 to 3 decibel separation between speech being louder than background noise for you to be able to understand it. With hearing loss, we know that number's greater. We know that it can be 10 to 15 decibels difference. Normal conversation level, to give you an example, is 60 to 65 decibels.
Like what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if let's say you're watching TV and you have hearing loss, we know you're probably going to elevate the volume of the TV because one of the complaints is I can't watch TV in the same room with him. He blasts me out of here. But let's say they have that TV at 65 decibels, normal conversation. If you walk in behind and your voice is only at 70, you're not loud enough over the TV for them to understand you. One of the things people with hearing loss will tell you is they rely on visual clues. They watch your lips and guess what they think you're going to say.
Or your actions.
Yeah. And you'll see them, their mouth will almost sometimes move with yours. But what happens when they don't have those visual clues is when you raise your voice, your body language changes. And to project your voice, your physical demeanor changes. So they'll go, why are you yelling at me? And they're going, I'm not yelling at you, you can't hear. And it creates another form of friction.
I can see where all of this creates a different dynamic between the family members. It's all negative from what I can tell. So that's not a good thing at all. So I love this conversation, Ryan. I'm glad that you're here. We're going to take a quick first commercial break. And when we come back, we'll have more from Ryan Bean. And it's very interesting. So stay with us.
Arden Courts is not just a place to live, it's a place to call home. Residential living combined with quality caregiving. This is the philosophy behind Arden Courts. Communities created exclusively for individuals with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia who would benefit from a safe and structured environment. For additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides, call 888-478-2410 to locate a community nearest you. Inquire about our educational seminars, resource library, or support groups, or simply feel free to ask questions you may have about Alzheimer's and related dementias. At Arden Courts, we know, we understand, and we can help because memory care is all we do. Remember, call 888-478-2410 for additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides. You are listening to your host, Marcia Teal, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on caregiversolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
We're back, and my guest today is Ryan Bean. Ryan is a board-certified hearing aid specialist with America's Best Hearing. And Ryan, we're talking about all things related to hearing loss, how it affects caregivers and other family members. And during the break, you mentioned something about the holidays. I'd like for you to repeat to everyone.
Yeah, one of the things that you'll see, and people will begin to share these kind of things, they'll say, well, dad or grandpa or husband, whoever it is, they'll say they're just not engaged. When the family comes over, they get upset and they leave, or they go in their bedroom and they watch TV by themselves. And what's really happening is because they can't engage, and you'll start to see social isolation begin to happen with hearing loss, especially the longer it goes and the more the hearing deteriorates, the more somebody begins to separate themselves from society. And we'll find that they don't even necessarily realize they do it, but that behavior begins to happen, they begin to withdraw. Because a lot of times as we begin the rehabilitation process, we fit the hearing aids, we begin to rehabilitate them to what the world sounds like, begin working on their speech recognition. They begin to do some of these things they've stopped doing over time, and they become more socially and they're more happy. Because hearing aids and hearing loss, the whole point is to make people happy, to enjoy conversation, to become socially active, because we see it and we know the less socially interactive you are, the quicker your health deteriorates.
Okay, that being said, thank you for that. What about the person who has been diagnosed with maybe some mild form of dementia, and so the family assumes that they're not engaging in the conversation because they can't follow it, they're not interested because they have dementia, they have no idea that it could be related to possibly hearing loss. Do you see that? We
do. One of the things that tends to happen, people have waited so long, it makes what we do so much more difficult because now we have more challenges The family has to become more involved because hearing aids, it's not a cure-all. Hearing aids are artificial devices. They don't fix the body. It's like if you get an artificial knee, it's better than a worn-out knee, but it's not a God-given knee. Hearing aids only work with what the body is capable of doing. It's not going to fix that pathway to the brain. But what we can do is we're not going to restore everything. But what we can do is get them to where they can be engaged and start triggering the memory. What we actually can see sometimes, and I'll get this, I don't see it often, but I'll have somebody that comes in and they'll, for whatever reason, they decide not to move forward. And they'll come back 3 years later and goes, it's gotten worse. And what we see is the thresholds of just the level of amount of hearing loss really hasn't changed. What has happened is those sounds of speech have not been going to the brain, and it's actually their ability to tell words apart that's gotten worse. And that's where the hearing aid can't go in and fit that missing pathway. So that's why time is of the essence, because once we get to that dementia diagnosis, we're really just putting a Band-Aid on it.
Okay, so it's good to have it checked out so you would know, is it really hearing loss or is it really the dementia, depending upon what stage you're at. So I guess with everything else that we talk about on this program is, be proactive and not reactive, right?
Exactly. It's like waiting to have a heart attack before you quit eating Big Macs. At that point, the damage is done.
Okay, so that being said, I love how you just segue right into my next question. What are some of the causes of hearing loss? Is it natural as we age to lose some hearing?
There is. One thing I'll tell you, these numbers are arbitrary. I don't know exactly how they come up with these. There's only 330 million Americans in the United States, supposedly. And so that number is now gone up to 78 million Americans have hearing loss. From that statistic, they say only 15% are over the age of 65. So we know noise exposure. There was a study done by the Better Hearing Institute that stated 15 minutes a day commuting on a subway train can produce noise-induced hearing loss. That doesn't mean you could take 3 people, put them in the same scenario, you're not going to necessarily get the same results.
Okay.
One of the things they're beginning to understand now is what's called autotoxicity loss. They're understanding that certain maintenance drugs, high blood pressure, diabetes, some of the side effects, it can actually cause a chemical change in the body that affects hearing.
Wow.
And then one of the other things is the natural aging process. I go back to when you look at a photograph from yourself and see how it changes. So what actually happens, and the reason why noise-induced hearing loss happens, that is where hearing is fine in the low frequencies. That's where the volume comes from, the A's, the O's, the U's. Somebody with that type of hearing loss will say, I can hear just fine. I can hear a train go by. I can hear an ambulance. I have plenty of volume, but I can't understand what people say. That's because the high frequencies have worn out over time.
So we do naturally lose some, not everybody, right? Just
Correct.
like other
Yeah.
people age better than others, and some people have more vision problems, some people have more hearing problems. So, but it's not the same for everyone.
Correct.
It just depends on how we accept our environment, how we deal with it, and the other factors. Like you said, medications, external noises. It depends on probably your occupation. If you were a builder or you were a lawn guy and you were listening to the lawnmower every day for 6 days a week without maybe mufflers on.
We'll actually see people, one of my offices in North Georgia, which is the home of the carpet industry. And we'd have people that come in that worked on tufting machines. I don't know a lot about tufting machines other than everybody tells me they're extremely loud. And I'd ask them if they wore ear protection, and they'd say, well, only when the boss came by. And then they'd take them out for whatever reason. But we could test, and out of 10 people, we would see 7 people with noise-induced hearing loss. And you'd always have those couple that are almost normal, but it's like the person that eats McDonald's every day and they're skinny. And you're like, well, how does that happen?
Yeah, it's the opposite. But it's prudent. People need to be aware of these things. So what can people do to maybe prevent hearing loss as we age? Not go to rock concerts anymore, or is the damage already done from our teenage years?
Well, one of the things is to get a hearing test. That is the first step. And it's one of those things people put off because they say, well, I'm not having any trouble. But at the very minimum, then we get a baseline. And the standard is every 2 years, but we actually recommend year to year, especially as you age. And then we actually can electronically, all that's stored, and we can compare it year to year.
So even if you're not seeming to have any problems, you should still get tested? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, just like you go to the dentist. When you brush your teeth for 2 minutes a day, it's not if you only brush for 2 minutes, that's not what's going to preserve your teeth. It's the constant act of doing it every day that leads up to something. So what it is, it's easier to catch things before they happen than it is after the fact. Mm-hmm. And I can't tell you how many people have come in and said, I don't believe I have hearing loss, I believe I'm fine. We test them, they have hearing loss. And because of the way we perceive it. And it's maybe not severe enough that they need help at this point, but it's some things that they can do to help preserve it.
So that leads me to ask you this. Why do people not want to wear hearing aids, or why do they act like they're in denial that they have any problems? Is it a social thing, or what have you found?
I don't have a set answer because over the years it's been a specific things. I'll see somebody who has come in and been tested somewhere else, and I'll say, well, what do they recommend? They recommended hearing aids. Why didn't you get them? Well, I wasn't ready for them. I don't know what that means, and they can't articulate it to tell me what it means. Sometimes it's, they were too expensive. People have a perceived conception of the value versus the benefit. And for some people, it's just they feel like wearing hearing aids admits that they're aging, which they are. But to see somebody that struggles with hearing, they look a lot older than somebody that's not struggling. And what I mean by that, we call it the struggle face, where you look like you're in pain because you're straining to understand conversation. It's a face, and it's not a comfortable looking face.
Yes.
And,
your eyebrows just furrowed up, and you had a quizzical look on your face, for those that are listening and can't see your face on our video.
And my wife and I will get into this sometimes because, I'll struggle to understand her sometimes because I have severe hearing loss. And so she'll say, why are you making that face? Because I'm trying to understand what you're saying.
Like that's going to help, right?
Yeah.
But it's just
it's a natural reaction that you can't control. If you stick a lemon in your mouth, you can't control your reaction to the sour taste. When you're straining to hear somebody, it's a physical, your body just physically responds in a way that you may not be able to control.
Yeah, but I like what you said, because I think a lot of people are admitting that they're old, right, by wearing a hearing aid. And I think it's a vanity thing. And they, especially, everybody, men, women, if they're vain, they're going to pretend that they're okay rather than have this thing on their ear, which is going to lead us into our next phase of our conversation about the different kinds of hearing aids and how maybe technology has improved over the years. So we're going to go to our commercial break. When we come back, we'll be discussing that with Ryan. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
Arden Courts is not just a place to live, it's a place to call home. Residential living combined with quality caregiving. This is the philosophy behind Arden Courts. Communities created exclusively for individuals with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia who would benefit from a safe and structured environment. For additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides, call 888-478-2410 to locate a community nearest you. Inquire about our educational seminars, resource library, or support groups, or simply feel free to ask questions you may have about Alzheimer's and related dementias. At Arden Courts, we know, we understand, and we can help because memory care is all we do. Remember, call 888-478-2410 for additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides. You are listening to your host, Marcia Teal, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on caregiversolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our national sponsor of this program, Arden Courts Memory Care Communities. Arden Courts is a leader in memory care for people that have Alzheimer's or some other form of dementia. And there are 10 Ardent Courts right here in Florida, and we have them scattered all across the United States. So hopefully there's an Ardent Courts near you. Ardent Courts is a great resource for caregivers. Not only do they care for the person with memory loss, but they care for the caregiver. That's you, because you never really stop being a caregiver, even though you are getting help in the caregiving. So Ardent Courts would like to provide to you this book. It's called The 36-Hour Day. It's a wonderful resource. It's written by Dr. Peter Rabins and Nancy Mace. It's in its 5th edition, so it's always being updated. And it's a great book for explanations, definitions, tips on caregiving. It's a wonderful book to have. You can flip it open to maybe something specific rather than having to read it from cover to cover. So this book is absolutely free to you just by calling Ardent Courts toll-free number. That number is 888-478-2410. Again, 888-478-2410. Give them a call today. Tell them that you heard about this free offer on the Caregiver Solutions Info Show, and they'll get your name and address and make sure that they mail a book directly to you. So don't delay and get this book. It's wonderful. You'll be glad that you did. So today, my special guest is Ryan Bean. He's a board-certified hearing aid specialist with America's Best Hearing. Ryan, how long have you been in this particular field?
I started roughly 15 years ago. Okay. And what had happened, my hearing aid, I needed service. And I walked into a place, and somehow a conversation had started, and they said, with your background, had you ever thought about this? And I said, well, normally there must be an opportunity when they asked me that question. And so that's how I fell into it.
Okay.
And what I found was, we all want to figure out what it is we want to do with our lives or what we're meant to do. And I felt like I fell into something where I could actually take somebody on the fence and help them through the same path I'd already been through because I've lived their life. And one of the things I could help them understand was with hearing and treating my hearing loss, that I was more engaged as a friend, as a husband, and more socially, things became more enjoyable. One of the things I'll tell you, the first day I went back, and everybody seemed to be aware I was getting hearing aids, and I came back, and because the way hearing aids are so almost invisible now, a few people didn't even think I'd gotten them, but all of a sudden I could engage in conversation that I couldn't in the past. And a few people said, we don't know if we like you having hearing aids now. And,
you're too chatty.
Yeah, and somebody came back and said, you've got them in? I just figured you didn't get them.
Because they couldn't see.
Correct.
So that's great because it tells us that there's less of a stigma now. I think hearing aids was a big stigma, like glasses used to be maybe in the day, but it's cool to wear glasses. So how have hearing aids changed over the years? Because obviously you've been in this business over 15 years.
Yeah.
How have they changed, and what part has technology played in that change?
Well, technology's been huge. If you think about the television you used to watch, the old console that was a piece of furniture, and you had an antenna, and you had to tell somebody, well, don't move, you're interrupting the signal, to where now you hit a button on your phone and you can stream live TV, which who would have thought that would be happening?
It's amazing, isn't it?
So hearing aids are really microcomputers on your ear, and what people don't seem to understand, a hearing aid is much more complex than a pair of glasses. If you go to a restaurant and you've got music playing, and you've got people around you talking, and somebody in the booth behind you, and you've got servers back and forth, all of this is happening. That's a challenge for somebody with even regular, I don't want to say normal, but something that's considered normal hearing.
Well, too much stimulation going on, and the dishes clattering and all of that. It is disturbing and disconcerting. Yeah. But with a person with hearing loss, it's probably
they're just socially, they're not even there.
Okay.
They can't enjoy conversation. One of the things we find is when a couple goes out to eat, because they can't enjoy conversation, they don't really communicate. They just eat their meal and leave. As opposed to when you can actually enjoy that environment, you'll find that people tend to stay in those environments longer because they can enjoy the social activity of it too, where it's not just a meal anymore. It's a time to relax, let somebody else wait on you, and you can have conversation, enjoy something that your hearing loss took away. Now, one of the key things is going and having a complete diagnostic hearing test will tell us what that math is and can we make that happen, because sometimes the hearing's so severe that we can't solve those environments. So that's another reason why the sooner you get it taken care of, the more likely we can help you with those type of environments.
So the hearing aids that are on the market today, are there a lot of them, just a few? And I know that they've gone from the big thing over your ear to things inside your ear. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, and so to help take some of the confusion away, and I always tell people this, there's only 5 manufacturers now that manufacture hearing aids for the entire globe. So if you think of how General Motors is structured, you have General Motors, but under that you have Cadillac, GMC, Chevy, but it's all General Motors. And then you have Ford. So if you understand hearing aids from that kind of concept, there's 5 people who make hearing aids. So no matter where you go, you're going to get one of those 5 manufacturer hearing aids. Now you may go to a place that has a specific label on the door that may sell one specific type of hearing aid, or you go to a multi-line like us where we have access to all 5 manufacturers. And within that, they make about 80 to 85 different types of hearing aids.
Different models?
Correct.
And different styles, and they do different things?
Well, there's only a handful of styles, but there's some differences in the technology in the hearing aid. So one of the things you want to ask somebody is, why did they recommend a specific hearing aid? Because all the 5 manufacturers, they all make good hearing aids, but there's some things that they do better than some of the other companies. And so it's understanding the math behind the hearing loss and understanding what product's going to work best for that.
So what you see on TV advertised the most on late night television may not be the type of hearing aid that you need, a person needs to take care of their personal problem.
One of the things I have in my office is I have one of those that they advertise. It's really more of an amplifier where you just put a battery in it and shut the door. And what that is, if you think about your television, your TV is a 1-to-1 ratio. What that means is you turn it up, everything goes up to the same volume. Somebody with hearing loss, that audiogram is not a flat loss. They have different needs at each individual frequency. So I will always put one of those in their ear because people will ask that question. And one of the things, we'll take them outside and they'll say, well, everything's just louder. And then when we put a professionally fit hearing aid on them and let them hear the difference, they go, that's clearer without just being loud.
And that seems to be the big difference between being just loud and being clear, but not necessarily louder. Because if you can get clearer, you probably don't need louder.
Yeah, volume and clarity aren't the same thing. If you turn your volume up in your radio and it goes extremely loud, you'll actually get distortion. Where you turn it down, it sounds better. It's not as loud, but it's clearer. So we want to give somebody ease of listening where they can enjoy conversation. One of the things you asked about technology, when you think of a hearing aid, it's a series of microphones that collect sound. So regardless of the environment, everything that's in that room is going into this hearing aid. The hearing aid has to decide what's speech, what's noise, what to do with what. What we're actually wanting to do is, I go back, we talked a little bit about signal to noise ratio again, because what we want to do is increase speech and give you that separation from background noise. And so we want to use a hearing aid that's going to do that the best for your specific hearing loss.
Do hearing aids still require batteries to be replaced every so often?
The technology of rechargeable batteries has been out in the market for a while. They weren't very good. We've seen a direct change in about the last 9 to 12 months. All the manufacturers now use what's called lithium ion. It's not an uncommon name. People are aware what lithium ion is. But the previous generation of rechargeable batteries would only give you roughly 12 hours of charge. If you're in the middle of a 16-hour day, you're in trouble. And so a disposable battery was still the best thing until recently. So one of the things we've seen with technology is now you can get 24 hours out of a charge. And we even see the charger now can be charged and give you, if you travel, you don't even have to plug that charger in. It will recharge your hearing aids 3 times over a 3 to 4 day weekend.
Wow.
And so that's one of the things we've seen too. And it helps because, especially with going back to dementia, one of the challenges was change batteries.
Right.
I couldn't tell you how many patients we've saw over the last 15 years where they have a hearing aid with dead batteries in their ears. That is just an earplug.
It's doing more harm than good at that point.
And try to teach some caregivers how to change batteries. And sometimes, for some people that can seem overwhelming. Well, how do I know when it's dead? How do I know it needs to be changed? All these questions, and they were great questions.
Yes.
And so with rechargeable batteries, it's much easier for everybody. You take them out, they sit in a charging dock. If people are used to charging their phones, it's not even that complicated because you don't have to plug a wire in. And you take them out and put them back in the ears, and off they go.
Okay. Do they still whistle?
One of the things, what feedback is when you do hugging, technology, the only way to get rid of feedback was to either plug the ear. People would say, well, I feel like my ears are stopped up. Or you had to turn the hearing aid down, which didn't solve the issue. Hearing aids actually now have feedback erasers. It's not new technology. It's been around for a while, but the technology's improved. What it actually does is when the hearing aid recognizes a feedback sound, it actually submits a upside down sound wave that matches it, and it cancels it out.
Wow, so that is new technology.
Yeah. So I understand the theory of how it works. It's so incredible that it actually works.
That is amazing. And now I've seen hearing aids that are practically invisible. I mean, you really have to look hard. If someone says, well, I have hard hearing and I have a hearing aid, you almost have to look right directly into their ear to see anything. Sometimes it's just a really thin little wire, and sometimes it's just so little inside you can't detect it.
One of the things that have changed, we've had over-the-ear hearing aids that have been nearly invisible for a long time. If somebody had oxygen, or if they had thick glasses, or if they didn't have a lot of cartilage up here, there wasn't enough room for everything. And we now have the ability to put inside the ear the hearing aid completely in the ear without it being visible. In the past, there was going to be something that was somewhat noticeable, no matter how well we blended it to skin tone.
Right.
And people just don't want anybody to see their hearing aids.
Well, I don't know. I think that by making them almost invisible, that people shouldn't have any excuses now. I mean, people that didn't like to wear glasses, they're flashing glasses with colors and rhinestones, and they want everybody to see that they wear glasses. We should do something like that with hearing aids so people wouldn't be so adverse. They do?
Yeah, one of my patients, he's, have you ever gone to the grocery store?
I was being facetious, but tell me.
Have you ever gone to the grocery store and seen the muscle magazines?
Sure.
The guys with gigantic weights and incredible muscles?
Uh-huh.
Well, I walk out in the lobby and I was almost intimidated. Here's this guy and he looks bigger than a pro wrestler, bigger than Arnold Schwarzenegger. And so he comes back and he has one ear that needs a hearing aid. He's, as a child, a gunshot went off near the ear and damaged the ear. And he says, what color do you have? And nobody really has asked me that. It's just normally we use skin tone. He goes, well, let me see. So he ordered blue, a bright blue. I never had anybody ask for that.
And that was an option?
Yep. He said, well, my kids will think it's cool.
Wow. So you can get different colors. That's amazing.
Most people, they don't think about it. We just kind of go with skin tone and match it or hair color.
Yeah, ladies can match their outfits now. I know some time ago we had someone on the program where we had the buttons that you wear around your neck, and if you fall, you push it. And a lot of people didn't want to wear those because it made them look elderly, it made them look frail and fragile. But until they started blinging them up.
Yeah.
And the ladies would wear them because all of a sudden they've got rhinestones and gemstones and all these fun colors and sparkly. It became a fashion statement, and they were happy to wear them.
From one of the manufacturers, Signia, which is the old Siemens, and they're the same company that produces Miracle. I actually have a color key that's probably 150 colors thick, where it looks like paint swatches.
Wow.
I don't show that to people typically because you can actually freeze people where they don't afraid to make a bad color choice.
Too many choices sometimes is hard too. That's why with people that have dementia, we want to give them choices, but do you want the blue shirt or do you want the black shirt? And either one is okay, but don't give them, 25 different colors to choose from. It's too difficult for them.
They actually had done a study at a farmer's market where they put out 15 jellies. And what they found was putting out 15 versus 3, they sold more when they only put out 3.
Because people could make a decision.
Because they
rather than walk away because they say, well, if I pick this, I might not like it, then I've wasted my money, right?
Yeah, because I'd like to buy 10 of them, so I won't buy any.
That's amazing.
It's just how we are.
Wow, that's amazing. We're going to take our last commercial break, and we'll be right back with more about hearing loss and some stories that Ryan's going to share. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Arden Courts is not just a place to live, it's a place to call home. Residential living combined with quality caregiving. This is the philosophy behind Arden Courts. Communities created exclusively for individuals with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia who would benefit from a safe and structured environment. For additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides, call 888-478-2410 to locate a community nearest you. Inquire about our educational seminars, resource library, or support groups, or simply feel free to ask questions you may have about Alzheimer's and related dementias. At Arden Courts, we know, we understand, and we can help because memory care is all we do. Remember, call 888-478-2410 for additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides. You are listening to your host, Marsha Teal, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on caregiversolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marsha. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
We're back, and my guest today is Ryan Bean. He's a board-certified hearing aid specialist for over 15 years. And Ryan, I've so enjoyed talking to you about all things with hearing loss, how it affects not only the person who has the hearing loss, but maybe their caregiver, their families as well. Talking about how hearing loss and dementia, there's some correlation there and all the things we need to know. So all of that being said, there's a lot of positives to getting help when there's hearing loss, but people still don't do it. Why do you think that is?
I think we still run into a cost perception. And one of the things we've done as an industry is because hearing aids fall into medical retail, and where insurances typically haven't covered them. And it's not just hearing, eye care and other things, where it's treated as you're going to go 100% out of pocket. Mm-hmm. And so one of the challenges have been, how do we make hearing care more accessible to more people? And Costco, and I bring this up as a model, there's some positives and negatives, and they do some things really well. Our organization, we've got clinics all over the state, and one of the things you'll find, we all have been have a background of multiple years in the industry, in the field. We've come from different places, Beltone, Miracle Ear, some of the top private practices. And you'll find one of the things that we, as a group, have focused on is, how do we get better technology? How do we make it accessible to more people? Because in the past, you did have to spend quite a bit out of pocket to get the level that you actually needed to benefit you. Mm-hmm. Whereas we took an inexpensive pair, they really weren't going to provide enough benefit for somebody.
So why bother, some people might say. And they think they can't afford the one that they really need.
We may be able to help them with A, B, and C, but we really couldn't help them with A, B, C, and D per se. Mm-hmm. One of the things, and we've got people in our organization actually came from a Costco, and one of the things they do really well is they have forced price points down. But one of the things people have told us is they want that type of pricing, but they want the care that they get in a clinical setting, because they just can't get that in a warehouse for several different reasons. So we've tried to figure out, how can we do that? How can we offer that type of pricing, and we give them the service and the care what they need? Because what people need to understand too, you can shop all day, call places and go, how much is this hearing aid? It's not like buying a Chevy, where, yes, we all pay the same price and purchase the same price from the manufacturers, just like a Chevy dealer to a Chevy dealer buys the same product. It's a little more in-depth than that, because if you go to a movie and you sit in the dark for several hours and you walk out, your eyes have to readjust to sunlight.
Right.
If you've waited, the studies say the typical person waits 7 to 10 years to treat hearing loss.
Wow.
If you wait that long, we know, even when we run what's called real ear measurement, and we know where your targets are, we know for majority of, if not all people, we can't give that to you right away. It's like if you ran a mile every day for 10 years and you quit running, and 5 years later you want to start that again, you can't pick up where you left off.
So it's a process.
Correct.
So what you're saying is, once you get the hearing aids, it's a process to get to the point where they're going to be working for you at their very best.
The best thing we can do, because you may never get to full what you actually need, but we want to give you as much comfortability with audibility. Because in the beginning, what happens, if we just set those to target and sent you on your way, the world would be too loud. And the likelihood is you're not going to wear them and they end up in a drawer. But if we do this process correctly and we slowly build your tolerance over a period of time, everybody's different. Some people it's a few weeks, some people it's a few months, some people it's a year. We don't know. And so we tailor that program as we go along. So that's really the most critical thing, because you can have the same pair of hearing aids go 3 different places and have 3 completely different outcomes.
Wow.
So one of the things, and I want to take some of the confusion out of there, is finding somebody that's going to give you the time and lay that out. And that's why.
And the education,
Correct.
because there is a lot to know. It's just like you said, not as simple as just plopping them in your ear. There's education that goes with it.
And one of the things people will see, is mail order, and I have sometimes people ask me about that, and they'll say, well, this is the same circuit, and I can get it here for X amount of dollars. Great. What they're going to do is set that hearing aid to target. And one of the things when people begin to understand in the office setting during the testing is they can't tolerate what we call full-on gain. They need that backed off, and they have different perceptions of sound. So that's what you're going to get, and then it's how do you get that serviced? Because now you're going to have to hunt somebody down and pay them to service you. And so online hearing aids actually should be cheaper than what they actually are, because they're not going to give you any of that service.
So it's a little bit like if somebody had a prosthetic leg, right? And they get it on, right? Oh, now I've had to have my leg amputated, but now I have a new one.
Yeah.
I'll just go out and start walking, but that's not the case. They have to have the rehabilitation and learn how to use it and exercise and work it until then, yes, they can get up and walk, and maybe nobody would even know. Same thing, right?
That's the most important thing, because if you cut corners, what ends up happening is you get a pair of devices that aren't comfortable to wear. And I don't mean physical, I mean this actual sound amplification of the hearing aid. And what is happening is the brain will say, I don't like that. And when the brain says, I don't like that, it's going to win.
Yeah.
And those hearing aids end up returned or in a drawer, and you go, I just spent X amount of dollars for something I don't even use.
And that's why a lot of people with dementia are always taking their hearing aids out, right? And they're throwing them away, they're taking them out. A lot of times they can't communicate what is the problem. They aren't able to verbalize. They just know that it's not comfortable, they're going to take them out.
And those are perfect questions if you are working with somebody that has dementia. You want to ask these kind of questions of their provider. Have they worked with people with dementia? How do they handle this? Because the person with dementia can't always communicate. So some of this is just by going by, I hate to say gut, because some of this is. It's being able to recognize physical clues in somebody that's uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And then also understanding if we've underfit them. Because if you underfit somebody that can't communicate that it's too soft, they're in the same boat they were, even though they have hearing aids in.
Right. Very good. Very, very good points. So if our listeners are hearing, no pun intended, and liking what they hear, and they'd like more information, are they able to contact you, and how?
Well, I don't know if you have our phone number right there.
Actually, yes, I do. I'll give it. It's called America's Best Hearing, and you particularly are in the Delray Beach office.
We have 3 offices here locally in South Florida.
Okay.
Boynton Beach, and then Royal Palm Beach.
And the newest one right in Delray, right up the road from us.
Yeah, we're the newest location.
Okay, newest location. So write this down. Phone number is 561-501-4392. 561-501-4392, and you can call and make an appointment. What is the cost for a consultation normally, since people have to pay out of pocket? Is it something that people can invest in? Does the price of it go toward a hearing aid?
Great question. A lot of places, ours included, have chosen not to charge for it, and here's the reason why. One of the things is you have to make the decision. If you're going to charge, you have to charge everybody, because Medicare actually will pay for a hearing test. They'll pay up to $85 once a year. Now, however, if you are willing to do that, you have to charge everybody. Mm-hmm. You can't just charge Medicare patients.
Gotcha. Mm-hmm.
So we don't want that to be a deterrent to keep somebody from coming in the door. And so that part of it, we cover that. We absorb that. It's time out of our schedule, but we do that as a courtesy. And if one of the things we look at, there's only 3 possible outcomes. There's no hearing loss, and at that point we set up a follow-up schedule for a year out. Or there is hearing loss, and we have to determine, is that treatable, or does that need to be looked at an ENT? And if it is treatable, we have several different options. I think one of the reasons why people are afraid to come in, too, is they're afraid they're going to be pressured into getting hearing aids.
Right.
And it's one of those things, either you're going to get the help or you're not. We're going to lay out what's in your best interest and let you decide from there. And
I think by doing that, it gives people peace of mind, too, so that they have a baseline, almost like when women go from, mammograms. Yeah. They have a baseline, so then later, check it out later, find out there's been changes. Yeah. So it's very, very important, and I thank you for doing that.
Well, and one of the things we did, too, and I want to hit on this a little bit, When you look at Costco, they have two price structures, and they've done very well with that. And so one of the things we've done is you've taken the exact same manufacturer and followed their pricing points. And so, yes, Costco doesn't give away hearing instruments, but what they forced our industry to react to that, and they've forced us to make some changes that were much needed.
Well, change is good, as we always say. You know, it's usually for the better. I want to thank you for being here today. I very much appreciate your time and your expertise.
I've had a great time.
Yeah, me too. It's been wonderful. I want to thank you all for joining in. We will be back next week, same place, same time, WNN 1470. If you put it on your iHeartRadio app, you can listen to us anywhere in the world, or watch us on your phone or your computer at caregiversolutions.info. We'll have another wonderful program for you. Don't forget to call and get your 36-hour day book. Don't forget to call the America's Best Hearing, 561-501-4392, and go see Ryan. In the meantime, also, don't forget, give someone a hug, because they need it, and so do you. Take care, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining us for this week's Caregiver Solutions with Marcia Teal. Join us next week as Marcia, who has 15 years of Alzheimer's disease and dementia care experience, brings you more needed information to help with the care of your loved one. This show can be seen again on caregiversolutions.info, and questions can be left on the site, which may be used on the program to help others. See you next week for more Caregiver Solutions.